All right, we're back in Vegas. And in this case, what happens today, we're going to tell the world about. We're not going to keep it in Vegas. So, China, you've got a great background of accomplishments, all about human capital. You're not an HR person, but you're about people. And you've worked in executive positions, as we know, in major outplacement firms, in SHRM, Global Workplace, Research Institute, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like you to, if you could, share with us how this has kind of evolved, almost like, what did you want to, from where you were with what did you want to be when you grew up type of deal.
Yeah. So I grew up, I'm a Midwesterner, and I grew up in a really small town in southeastern Michigan. The life I've led, the opportunities I've had to make an impact, the global nature of the work that I've done, I didn't know any of that existed. So I didn't dream any of this because I didn't know it was there. My focus as I started my career in business really was that, I said leadership is unlocking the human potential for good in the world. I've always believed that, even though I didn't actually have a real sense of what that meant in the business world. My mother was a librarian and a ballet teacher. My father was a journalist. There was no business really, in my immediate family. So when I joined the world of work in HR in a paraprofessional role, and then moved into consulting in the outplacement world, and then quickly into leadership. It was because I saw sort of the dysfunction of how in, the very early 80s, organizations were dealing with people that were no longer necessary. And that really, that was a huge opportunity for organizations. I thought it was a huge opportunity for people to retool and to go out and find something that would be a better fit. And in fact, that's how the outplacement business actually worked. And as I moved into leadership pretty quickly at a local, then a regional, then a national, then a global kind of level, the focus on unleashing human potential for customers, for the staff, for stakeholders, really became my guiding principle. I didn't do my graduate work until I'd been 15 years out of college. So a lot of what I did, not having a business background, was learned by watching my superiors, either what to do or what not to do, and to try stuff. So happily, as I did my graduate work and moved up, sort of organizationally, my instincts were generally pretty good in terms of working with people, leading people, and really doing it in a way that gave them control, developed them, let them do, as opposed to the, I'll tell you what you need to know around. We operate on a need-to-know basis, and I'll tell you what you need to know. It was my leadership was always more participative, partly because I was young, partly because I was female, and that was how I could get it done. So
interesting how you can use that to your advantage, if you will.
No, exactly. I remember the first big general manager job I had, other than a startup, but starting up a branch office. Every person on the staff was older than I was. All the administrative help, the sales, the experts and consultants, everybody was older than I was, and it was a definite turnaround situation. And there would have been no win for anybody had I come in and just started telling people what to do, right? So
one quick sideline. There's a friend of mine in Miami told me recently. He said, "Mark, you were always the youngest and the shortest in every meeting. Now you're just the shortest." Great.
Well, women ask me a lot about being a woman business leader. And because I was so practiced at a young age, I was running businesses before I was 30. So I was a kid and I was a girl, right? So I found that by immediately just assuming that they saw a kid, that I would create an impression of competence, create an impression of experience, that in doing that, it handled the gender piece as well. And I was probably well into my 40s before I ever felt like there was any kind of negative judgment based on me because of my gender. When many of my female peers were battling, the female discrimination piece since they joined, sort of joined the world of work. And I really felt that because I moved up quickly, that by focusing on my age and sort of youthful look, I was handling both at the same time, and it never really came up until I was pretty well into my mid-40s, and then it was like a ton of bricks. But by that time, I was, I had seen it, and I had just been grateful that I hadn't had to deal with it, and so I was actually prepared, and I don't think it ever really got in my way. But
well, it sounds like, not to get political, if you will, sounds like you proclaim competence instead of being victimized.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because in my early leadership assignments, it was all about turnaround. And so, these were all situations where you had, you'd be dropped in from another location. You had to roll up your sleeves. I had to roll up my sleeves, get the team aligned, get everybody focused on what the challenges were and what we were going to do to fix them together. It was roll up your sleeves and get to work time. I couldn't fool around with political stuff. I couldn't fool around. We had no time to fool around. And so then after 2 or 3 of those, having a reputation for competent turnaround leadership, focus on doing well by your people,
Right.
And being fair and approachable and really authentic all the time, I think really helped sort of put the wind in my early managerial career sales.
I find that you're in a place where most HR professionals would love to be, and that's strategic in the business. And to me, I find it's unfortunate that either some can't do it, but a lot would like to be strategically in the business, and they're not allowed to be strategically in the business. And with respect to talent, we've always, in my business, executive search, we always go after the quote unquote right fit person.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And it's funny and that they're always still the number one asset. Technology is not the number one asset. The people still are the number one asset. And we like to proclaim that. And this is where your point I love about humanity, bringing humanity back into the workforce. Companies don't hire people. People hire people.
Right.
And people don't join companies, even though I understand the semantics obviously behind it, but people join people.
Exactly right.
Can you talk about that and your experiences in that?
Sure.
About being strategically involved, like you were
right,
talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So HR folks, I think, are the Rodney Dangerfield of corporate life. Right? They don't get no respect. And I think part of it is in the evolution of that function from non-existent to personnel administration to human resource management, now really to sort of talent management or people management and those kinds of things. The folks who are, by and large, in charge now of the C-suite are mostly baby boomers, and I'm smack in the middle of that baby boomer generation. And when we were coming up, I mentioned this earlier, the way it worked was, stuff rolled downhill, and from the top,
Right.
It was very militaristic. I'll tell you, we operate on a need-to-know basis around here, and I'll tell you what you need to know. Information was power. And so when the folks who are in the C-suite now were having their first general management assignments, it was personnel, it wasn't human resources.
Right.
And personnel was a risk mitigation function, it was an administrative function, and that's what it did. And so as these leaders, moved up on the ladder of influence in their careers, I think they continued to relate to what is now HR or talent management in the way they did in their first assignments. And so while I believe on the whole that HR professionals are incredibly strategic, they know how their business operates. They know how their business makes money. They know what the business model is. They are kind of relegated back into the personnel construct, and their budgets aren't strong, and their staffing isn't strong. Now, there's a big exception to that, and that's about the Fortune 300. Those CHROs do sit on the right hand of the CEO.
Right, right.
They do have budgets. They do have people. They can experiment in technology, in research, in analytics. And they're sort of the future of what I think HR is going to be, probably in 10 to 15 to 20 years. And then there's everybody else, which is, I think about, so if there's 300 in the Fortune 300, what are there? 7.5 million other organizations, and that's a lot of HR people who aren't operating at that level. Their budgets are not robust. Their staff is not robust. They are supremely consumed, because they must be, around regulatory compliance and that changing landscape that changes actually pretty much every day. And they're underfunded and they're understaffed, and so they have to keep the CEO out of jail, right? Job number one.
Yeah.
And so they don't have a lot of extra bandwidth to be working on the strategic things that I know they should be working on, and they don't have the staff to invest, and they don't have the budget to invest. And so I was joking when I said I think HR is the Rodney Dangerfield of the corporate world. Actually, I have great empathy for them, because the ones that I talk to and the ones that I meet when I'm speaking at conferences, and they know what they need to do. They can't get to it. Their organization won't let them get to it. And so, what do? Do you stop staying on top of the changing regulatory environment to work on workforce planning and those kinds of things, and oops, we missed a big thing and now we've got a penalty, and it's expensive.
No, I know a lot of the HR people we work with, they want to be strategic too. And let me throw something else in there that I know you're great at. It's branding and marketing. And I've always loved and believed that your employees are like an incredible part of your brand. You said it goes through everybody, all the way to the investors, to how your employees days would say to work at so media. And I've even organized with companies, employees, especially media, online, saying they love it city because then other people read it and they want to go. Exactly. So talk to me about relates to what you do, and well part of rewards, how he's engaged, performing, and being happy.
No, absolutely. And is, I think, in corporate brand, or to put it another way, your brand is your brand. And so, social technology, whether us baby brands, transparency is day, that our employees openly stuff, not just about their employees, that we would never, would we share some of the things, how they breathe, and it's sure, but the enormous opportunity for leaders to really, to see this opportunity threat. It wasn't that long. Right. HR was putting policies that says, now can you not be on it? You can't even, you can't social media at work. And is sure. On the 4th year. I think still their social media, but on the internet. when we're publicly traded, every time you join, sign a thing that's essential information and what's confidential, and so we'll need another thing, and what we say on Facebook and on Instagram and kinds of things. You can create a culture. Please trust the leadership. Initiated,
Right.
Not being paid well, but treated as an individual life, not just a 9-to-5 kid. Maybe better themselves. Maybe employers really create an environment where people feel like people.
Absolutely.
And not an easily replaceable bag of skills, they start to appreciate where they are. And on top of that, then, if their work in some way provides meaning to their life, you're good to go.
You're great to go. I mean,
Yeah.
Maya Angelou.
Sure.
Well, I know she passed away. One of my favorite quotes she's ever said, and there's plenty, was most people won't remember what you said. They won't
Yes.
remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I know a CEO who joined a new organization, and there were people far flung, and the ability to be it wasn't a huge organization, but the ability to be face to face regularly with all employees was very small, and it was an organization that had been through enormous change and challenge, and she wanted a way to really connect in a personal way with all the employees. And so they did things like, every week on Mondays they had a video conference call with everybody. But starting on her first week, every Friday she sent an email message to every single employee that was really, here's what happened this week, and here's what I'm working on, and here's what I love about what you've done this week.
That's awesome.
And I talked to her, and she said, there are some weeks when it's Thursday night and I'm writing my Friday message, I don't know what I'm going to say. But when she thought about, here's what happened this week, here's what you did this week that I really loved, and here's what I've been up to, there was always something to talk about. And she got such great feedback from employees all the time. Not everybody every week, but she probably heard from everybody at some point during the year about this particular message really met my need, or thanks so much for the shout out, or
thanks for being human, basically. And
exactly.
What do you talk about? Transparency, otherwise known as authenticity,
exactly,
et cetera, et cetera. So I got some personal questions,
okay.
Very personal questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for very personal questions?
Sure.
Do you have a pet?
We do. We have two Shiba Inu dogs, an older dog and a younger dog, and they are Fresca and Katie, and they are great companions for us.
We've been suggested to do at first it was called Executives and Their Pets series, but it's been changed to Pets and Their Executives.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So we're going to be requesting pictures of executives with their pets, so be ready. Do you have a favorite activity or sport?
Well, so the two different questions. I'm married to a football coach, so from a sport perspective, I get fired from the wife job if I don't say football is my favorite sport. But from an activity perspective, I'm a big Broadway theater fan. So awesome. I like nothing better than when I'm in New York or London or anywhere to see live theater. My favorite.
That's awesome. How about movie or TV show?
I don't have a lot of time for TV, and part of that is just because I think a lot of it is not, sort of worthy. But I will confess, if this is true confessions, that I have become addicted to HGTV, and I have visions of backsplashes and stone counters and, all of that kind of stuff. Because I'm watching that stuff. It's on in the background. Usually, I turned it off for this today, but it's usually on in the background.
Unique answer. How about a favorite book?
Oh man, I'm a reader in my downtime and lots of time on airplanes, and I love sort of legal military thriller
Oh,
kinds of
wow.
stuff. And normal detective stories. So right now I'm in the middle of the new Lee Child Jack Reacher book. So
Ah.
yeah.
My favorite author with those type of books is Nelson DeMille, if you ever
Oh,
read.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. How
Yep.
about music and food? Any favorites?
Food. I'm a big fan of food, and
Good to know.
about music. I have a theory. I think the music that was your music when you were a junior and senior in high school and in your college days, that's your music for the rest of your life. And
I,
so my favorite music group is the Manhattan Transfer because that's what fueled me through college.
it's a good theory, I think. Hey, thank you so much for sharing. That's awesome.
Great.